Okay.
Okay.
Recording is now in progress. And so, good morning, everybody. I'm Peter Halley, the chair of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers. Today is Saturday, November 23rd. It's a little bit after 10 a.m. And this is a duly noticed meeting of the committee that's set for this date. I have established that there is a quorum present of 8, which is what we require. And I just want to remind everybody that this is a virtual meeting. Anything you say will be recorded, and if you have backgrounds or papers that you think can be read that you'd rather people not see, you are welcome to blank out your screen or move your papers. It's hard to get rid of your background, I guess, and except for Kathy, who has a Nantucket background and she's in Chile, I guess. So why don't we proceed? The meeting is called to order. It is being video recorded. We have our membership count. And do I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
I move that we approve it.
Second.
And second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Good. Agenda is approved. A motion to approve the proposed minutes of the October 5th meeting.
Move to approve.
Okay, and second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Okay, good. What I'd like to do is sort of go a little bit out of order and sort of go to the current issues last, in part because we don't have really a full group of people, and therefore I think there may be one more seeking to join. Let's see, Patty is here, and Patty's phone is here. Patty, should we count you twice? We have you and your phone. Okay, we have a quorum and we've just started. And just to start with the Town Council Study Committee, and I will say something about the Nantucket Master Plan, which is not much, and then go into a brief overlook of the citizen articles, and then go back to priorities if we have a more fulsome group of people, if that's okay with everybody. So Donna, would you like to tell us what's up?
I can only stay for an hour, Peter. I have some.
Yeah, I think we're gonna try to beat our record for having a recordly long meeting every single time, and just skip through this stuff if we can, because I think we just have there's not a lot to discuss, but there's some things that people should be aware of with respect to the town meeting as we go forward. So Donna, what is happening, or what has happened with the Town Council Study Committee, and where does all that stand?
We are not going to make the annual town meeting of May 2025. I think I mentioned it before, but it's definite because everything that we've done with the charter has to be reviewed by KP Law.
Mm-hmm.
However, Joe Grouse, our chair, put together a draft. He calls it Sense of the Meeting and Sense of the Ballot Vote, which I will send to you after the meeting, Peter, and you can disseminate it
Great.
to everybody. But there are just a couple of points. It's a draft that he prepared for the select board, and it sounds like he wants to also present something at the ATM in May, but not a warrant, just sort of a sense of a ballot, he calls it. And in order to give us some feedback as to if the select board is still with us and what the Nantucket voters feel about the project. But I did want to mention, although it's in the draft that I'll be sending to you, that we were included in what he calls significant advantages to a town council form of government. One of the items is quote unquote summer residents or non-voting taxpayers who pay 80% of Nantucket's taxes and make up an important part of our community can also attend town council meetings and make their voices heard. So that's, if you will, a notice and a tribute to us. But the rest I will send to you.
Good. It just to clarify, in this rest, is there a draft, and I've not looked recently, is there a draft of the the law that would create the town council yet? And even though it has not been, fully vetted by council, is there some sort of draft or outline of that law that is available for people to look at?
I don't know if there is such a thing. I do know that we aren't even there yet. So I can find out if there's, I mean, there is a lot of legal procedures. There are many legal procedures we have to follow. And I am not a lawyer, so I'm not familiar with what they are. But Joe Grouse is, and he's being counseled by the Collins Institute and the Select Board also.
Okay, good.
If that helps.
Yeah, it does help. And so thank you. Any discussion on town, town council and I think our generalized, my sense of our committee is that we are generally in favor, depending on how the thing is finally written, of going from a town meeting to a town council form of government, as it has been discussed so far. But it's hard to, achieve a final thought on it without actually seeing the proposal that will be offered to the town at a future annual meeting. So any discussion of that? Okay, good. And then why don't we go on to the ATM articles, citizen articles, which is actually a sort of perfect segue with Donna's report, because citizen article, what is it? Let's see, from Campbell Sutton, without so much as really mentioning it, puts the town council form of government squarely on the 2025 annual meeting warrant list. And what I've done is, and I suggest the rest of you do it, and we can send out my list, but I've looked at the 20 or so proposed citizen articles. And as you all recall, you have citizen articles, and then you eventually have select board articles, and perhaps you already also have maybe a FinCom article or this or that or the other. But we're at the very beginning of the process for the 2025 town meeting. And the first thing that come in are the citizen articles, and they are now in, and the deadline has passed, I think, for submitting any further ones. But one of the 10 or so that drew my attention is this proposed citizen article I from Campbell Sutton to amend the town charter section 2-1 legislative powers. And that and I, Don, I would think that somebody, I'm pretty sure that your group is aware of this, or the leadership is aware of it. But Campbell Sutton's proposal is to have the town vote in part that the legislative powers of the town shall remain vested in the town meeting open to all voters. And that's the first thing in this proposal. And then the proposal basically would require there to be two town meetings, annual town meetings a year, one devoted strictly to financial issues and the other devoted to real estate and all of the other issues. The first of the two town meetings would be in the spring, which it usually is, and get the financial issues out of the way prior to the end of the fiscal year as required by Massachusetts state law. And then everything else would be at a second fall town meeting. And I'm sure the idea behind this is to take any steam there may be out of the town council form of government proposals, because there is it seems to me from watching a lot of town meetings and looking at Nantucket politics over the years, there's a small, very vocal group of activists who it's kind of their town meeting and they don't want to lose it. So the argument probably will be, oh, this solves all the problems because, we won't have one meeting that is so loaded up that you lose everybody by the end. So I think this is kind of the first shot across the bow of this issue since the adoption of the study committee. And it really is an important, it will be an important step. And I think it's an incumbent on Joe and your committee to think through a response to this. And it seems to me that a good response would be to better preview during remarks, if allowed at the town meeting, what will be proposed and how it will or will not change things in the future. I think right now it's kind of a mushy generalized concept that is so easier to attack because the target's so blurry. But so if you would maybe bring it up to Joe and make sure that he has some focus on it. He's very astute fellow. And my guess is he will have it.
Peter, may I?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, two thoughts. Number one, the fact that they're even coming up with the idea of a second annual town meeting kind of confirms that we need to make a change. And I guess the second thought is for these folks, as you said, there's a core group that really likes having annual town meetings. I wish they would consider that actually they can talk all year long. They can attend every single town meeting. So instead of having one or two, they can make their voices heard 12 months out of the year. So they really would have more of a voice.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a lot of voice, as we have a lot of voice, but there's only so much power. And this has to do with power. And that is the power of the vote and the power of the ability to, gather up your group of supporters to go to a town meeting and try to pass or defeat whatever is up. And that is lost in a way at the town council form of government because all the power is still in the voters, but it's a step further away from the actual vote on issues because it's a representative form of government. And you try to get your representatives to vote the way you'd like them to vote. So it's just a different scenario. Plus, fiscal issues come up throughout the course of the year. They not just in the spring before the budget has to be adopted. So anyway, those are my thoughts, and they're, you know, not
Peter,
very well formed. Yeah.
two things. Yeah, one is that I agree that splitting it into two, first of all, that's not an even breakout because the fiscal decisions kind of, we blow through those pretty quickly. That's really not what you still have one huge town meeting. And I think it is definitely a power play or something to preempt the whole idea of a town council so that those folks that show up at town meeting in these strong groups have more of a voice and they have more of a vote. Just going to every town council meeting and saying what they think does not mean they're going to get their way. So I just think it's a bad idea. It's preemptory and it really goes against what the voters have already said. Let's look at the town council form of government. So I don't think eventually we shouldn't support this one, but we're not talking about that now. Oh, here's
Yeah.
Lynn. She just joined.
Yeah.
I actually agree with what was just said. I think one of the disadvantages of a town meeting is you can intimidate people by having a gang of very vocal activists. And I think they like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say having watched a lot of these town meetings, there's some very good orators that live in this town. It's real reality TV, which is better than the phony reality TV. So anyway, just sort of going down the list, anybody who wants to go on the town's website under 2025 annual town meeting could find the citizen warrant and this list. And I think it was just published late this past week.
Yeah, I sent the link out to everybody.
Yeah. Okay, good. Great.
Yeah.
So the ones that, in addition to that I've sort of skimmed through they're basically several of them that go to short-term rentals. And then there's one that goes to acquisition of land for My Island Home. And I don't know, is that the one, if anybody knows?
It is.
Trying to get rid of Surfside Crossing?
It's the people from the tipping point.
Yeah.
It's Morgan Perry who's been screaming at the select board for the last several meetings. And so first they asked the select board to take over all of that land and change where the Old Island Home was supposed to go. And the select board said, we have no interest in doing that. And then the owners of the property said, we have no interest in selling to the town. So frustrated, Morgan Perry now comes up with this new theory, which is, okay, the town should, by eminent domain, take over all of the tipping point property, and then we can ask them to move the Old Island Home there and stuff like that. So she keeps pumping away. She's very rude to the select board, violates all of our rules. And so they're continuing their battle, the people at tipping point.
Okay, I thought that was, so that's Surfside Crossing and getting rid of that.
Yeah,
whole thing.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. There are, I guess so the ones on short-term rental are B, Patricia Wright. Let me just go through this real quickly. F, Fred McClure. G, Matthew Peel. I'm not sure about W. Is that a short-term rental, Emily Molden? Or is that?
No.
I frankly can't understand that one. X, Carolyn Balzer. And I think those are it. In looking at those, and again, I just very briefly, I printed them out and skimmed through them. It seems to me that only two of them do not implicate the issue that has been concerning us, which is discrimination against non-voting taxpayers. And those two, I believe, are the Peel amendment to the general bylaws and Carolyn Baltzer's zoning bylaw amendment. The Carolyn Baltzer amendment basically codify the zone of boarding appeals decision that would permit short-term rentals as an accessory use, I guess, as of right.
Yep.
So long as the intention at the acquisition of the property was a residential intention and not to just create a short-term rental. And I don't think we have a problem with that. And of course, that's on appeal, so we don't know what the ultimate outcome will be. And then as I read Matthew Peel's, I think that just would create a cap on the number of short-term rentals at something like 1,350 and a couple of other requirements, but they would not discriminate between permanent residents and summer residents, as I read it, and as I read it very quickly. But the others all have these residency requirements that we've objected to in the past, and I think for good legal reasons. Let's see. There are a couple of others where frankly, if somebody takes a look at this, they might tell me, what they're about and whether we should have an interest in them.
Did you notice, read in detail the change in public hearings? Does that impact us? I didn't really understand it.
Which one is that?
It's V.
So, I didn't read it, but I thought what it was just I thought what it was is basically now you have to publish when you have a public meeting, and anything that is required to be published has to be published in an actual legacy newspaper of general circulation in print. And this Jason Grazidii, he's the editor of The Current, which is a digital publication. I thought that was just a basic, which to me, common sense thing is that in addition to the Inky, you have fulfilled your publication requirements by using digital media. But again, I haven't read it carefully, but if that's the import, I think that it may actually be a good idea rather than a bad idea. But I think others should take a look at that and see if that's their understanding. Is that if I explain it that way, Kathy, is that ring
that makes sense? Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't really understand it.
Yeah. And there's one Y from Stephen Welch. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, which is basically, it's a proposal to draft something in the future, I think. So I don't understand that. There are a bunch of Stephen Mowry zoning changes, which I've not read through, and so I don't know what the import of those are. Whether
I think those are mostly he had a bunch of them last time, and they were basically to change the zoning so that you could subdivide the properties, or so that's like his real estate hat. These are clients asking for these changes, and that's the only way to get that permitted is to go with a zoning change. So I think that's what those are, but I don't know.
Yeah. And then there's D from Toby Brown, rescind unused borrowing authority, Affordable Housing Trust Fund. again, I just don't know the background of that, but it looked like a getting rid of something that already been appropriated and but had not yet been spent for affordable housing, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I think you're right. There are people who are mad that so much money's been set aside for it and they don't, it's like 6.5 million a year was approved. And so they're like, well, you didn't spend it this year. We want it back kind of thing. Okay, fine. I think it just rolls over or it's used.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a spending authority. So I don't, and then a lot of these, I think once the next time we should look at them, perhaps it's after town council has reviewed all of them and provided their feedback, because that's when it gets interesting to know what they're about and what's really troublesome legally. That would be that's the next step that happens with all of these.
Yeah. So I think that the question then, Kathy, is that whether we need to comment on any of these to the select board as they're doing that kind of consideration. And it may be that we do need to do that, just to, give them a point of view that they may or may not have considered. So maybe we'll just sort of, I don't know what the schedule is for the select board review. That I guess there's both legal review and select board review and FinCom review and perhaps somebody else's review that eventually comes together to form the final warrant. But what I sort of commend to you all to kind of read through it. It's not that arduous. It's lengthy, but if you pick and choose, you can get an idea of what's going on and whether you think that this in some way unfavorably impacts or favorably impacts non-residents. In general, what I usually see when I read these things is that, they tend to impact people in the same way, and they're either good ideas or bad ideas. And in my view, and if we think that something is a bad idea and it's worth spending some political capital on it, or a good idea that should be supported, then we ought to use whatever advisory power, and our power is basically and whether we can be a trusted advisor or not, to explain what our views are. So that I think for the time being is the citizen warrants. If anybody else have anything else on citizen warrants or the whole issue, I guess, of what's coming up at the town meeting in the spring. Yeah.
I have a comment, just so you know, for the timeline, FinCom starts December 12th on citizen warrants. And the town itself can continue their own warrant creation through the middle of January. And I know the Civic Association went in front of the Town Builders Association, and the town also has a landscape association to see how they would feel about the restriction in operating construction and noise. This is the noise bylaw that they're trying to get the select board to write. And so everyone was very positive, and the select board wants the rules to be the same island-wide to simplify it. But here's the hitch that they're waiting for. They all want to hear what Toscana thinks, because Toscana does the most amount of heavy work and needs to start early to prep. So that is the missing point to the appeal to change the bylaw so that it's consistent across any part of the island, not just the historic parts. So that I will keep you posted, but that was the update I learned on Thursday.
Yeah, I again skimmed the noise bylaw and found it very confusing because it's, other than making it uniform across the island, there's very little change.
That's right,
Or
Peter.
an hour
Yeah.
on a Sunday morning or
It's
something
small,
like.
it's small
In-
potatoes. It's small potatoes, but it's, that's what we talked about before. Nothing like what we were thinking about. So all we would do is just make the special rules that apply to the historic district downtown and Sconset Historic District to the rest of the island. And the issue that was raised before the select board last week was that because the Costanzo people start very early, and would this be a problem for them? And so the select board said, why don't you go find out, see if they have a real problem with it, because everybody else thinks it's fine, just to make it all uniform. It just, it's an hour or two change island-wide, no big deal.
But that's how you start progress, is you start small. Town moves in increments. So-
Yeah.
I wonder, Peter or Lynn, is it something that we should discuss?
We
Is there
discussed this
some-
before and had a positive motion several months ago that we
Right,
in support of the Civic League and the Civic Association sponsoring or endorsing this, but it always will go better if it's not a private citizen warrant, that it is a select board town-sponsored warrant. And so that has been the push. And so the fact that the select board was enthusiastic is a 180 from where they were several years ago when you wanted it island-wide.
Do you know what the timing of the Toscana input is?
I think the idea was they would get it within a week or two. They want to discuss it and then come back to the select board.
That's
So it's
right.
not going to be dragged out.
That's right.
So I think our position on construction noise in the past and has been radically different from what this is, and it's been defeated. The question is where we want to be on this, or as Lynn says, this is a very, very small step in the right direction, and just let this happen if it looks like it's going to happen, which I think that would be a good idea. But we also have this other noise issue, what I'll call amplified noise issue, that Lou Bassano brought up earlier this year. And I guess the question is, do we want to say anything about that? Send them something to see if we can't, get it tacked on to this, or whether we go take some different approach. And as you may all recall, this has to do with playing using amplifiers in public spaces like parks that are adjacent to residential communities, and where the amplification really carries through to the, a substantial amount of the residential communities and interferes with the peace and quiet for summer residents and residents alike. Do we want to do anything to bring that up and see if we can get it tacked on?
It would be a separate article, because the article that is currently written is exclusively about really construction. So I'm looking up where it would fit. But yes, I thought we were all very positive on that. I thought the town was very positive about it. But it wouldn't go on the construction noise bylaw.
Has anybody, do you know if anybody drafted? I think I may have tried to draft something. I just can't remember, because I've drafted so many different things, whether this is one of them, taking the existing bylaw and trying to come up with words that uh, basically attack the subject matter, but don't go too far. So it looks like people's, ability to use their homes are being restricted in some way. And
Peter,
then,
oh,
yeah,
I do have a comment too on that because I know that park is very close to like the Tom Nevers community.
yeah.
But if you start getting into amplified music during the day
Mhm.
versus after 10 o'clock at night, which is kind of how it is now, what
Yeah.
happens if Kathy Baird wants to put a tent up in her yard and have a wedding and have music during the day? Is she then not allowed to do that?
I
Or
think
is-
it was mostly on town property.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, because I think, because obviously if you do it on private property, you're getting certain
Yeah,
permits.
town, public property, that
Okay.
was, I think,
That
that was, I
was-
think, the goal.
Yes. That was, and I think the issue was sort of the optical issue of it is public property and all the, hardworking people use that public property, and how much is appropriate to curtail their use of it where it involves amplified, music and stuff like that. That's, it's almost, I don't want to hear you, that kind of thing.
Right, and would there be the option for then these people, if they wanted to host an event on public property, to get a permit and
Yes, yeah.
keep
That-
it
that
within
would
the
be the-
constraint levels? Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of the pressure relief valve,
Yeah.
but people hate applying for permits, especially if there's a fee associated with it.
Well, you
Is that
get
right?
a waiver from the town, so it's no different. Just like weddings get waivers at private clubs to stay out later than 10 o'clock with a band.
I don't know if they do that. I'm under the impression it's 10 o'clock for that kind of thing, no matter what, like the
I
casino
had a
has to shut
waiver
down at
My
10.
daughter's wedding, and that's pretty typical.
Oh, okay, so it's because the casino has always held hard to that 10 o'clock.
Casino's different than the golf clubs.
Yeah, and I mean, I live next to the Westmore Club, and I think they've pretty much restricted that to 10 o'clock as well, and the number of tents that they can put up during the course of the summer, and that sort of thing. So I'll see if there's something very limited and pass it around to the group. And we'll see if people think it's worth making a try.
I think it's too late to do anything like that, Peter, in the cycle.
Yeah,
I think you're wasting your time if you do that, but go right ahead.
yeah. Well,
Okay,
Gary,
Pete.
the question always is whether you got to start sometime, and whether it is part of the cycle or it's at least getting some agreement on what it would look like. Because ideally, you either want a select board to propose this, or if you had some citizens who felt that this was a problem, have a citizen proposal for it. But we can't propose anything. We can just advise.
So quick final note, Peter, I forgot to mention this before we move on to the next topic, which on the two STR articles that are, one was, let me see. B and F,
Yep,
if one's general, one's zoning,
yep.
and you look at them and you go, they're the same thing. What I think they are is the way, if you remember, the town is going to take all of these, which were randomly submitted, and they're going to renumber them along with the other articles and have the zoning go first and the general articles go second. That's pretty much what they do. So what this, I believe, would do, it would put F, which is the zoning article, first. That's contains residency requirements. And if that doesn't get the 2/3 majority, then Article B would come up in the general bylaw with the same stuff in it. And it only needs a majority. So I think that's the strategy there of the folks putting these together, because I didn't understand why they were the same. And that has to be why, in my mind.
Yeah. So the counterweights, but I don't know that they're how weighty they are to F, which is a zoning bylaw amendment, would be X, Carolyn Baltzer's zoning bylaw amendment, which
Yeah.
and so those two would, I guess, go before, and then
And then which one goes first? When the town
I don't
renumbers
know
them.
whether it's in
Yeah.
alphabetical order or how, and initially they'll be, well, those just are two, they're not reconcilable. They're polar opposites.
No.
Well, greater minds than ours will figure that out, I guess. And then on the general bylaws, you've got McClure, as you pointed out, an F, and maybe Matthew Peel, which is G.
Mhm.
Yes, he's got a general bylaw, and Peel's, as I mentioned, didn't appear to me to be discriminatory, but if I'm recalling correctly, it basically says nobody can short-term rent for more than 70 days a year. And I think that also may have some requirements that, for example, during the high season, the minimum short-term rental is 7 days, but during the rest of the year, it would be 3 days or something like that. Yeah, I think that's what that one does, and the limitation to 1,350. And how many people are registered now? We don't know how many rent actually, but what, 2,000 or something?
I don't think 2,000 are registered, because up until September, there were maybe 250.
Yeah,
And that was largely because people didn't understand the rules. They didn't know if it was for this year, for next year. Now they've confirmed that. So if you registered in 2024, you're automatically good for 2025
yeah,
because of the due dates. So there was a huge rush to register around the end of October. But I don't know how many, they haven't published how many are registered, but I doubt they've got 2,000
Yeah.
at this point.
yeah. So the only question really is whether this cap is, a ho-hum, or it says some people are going to be looking to not be able to rent.
Yeah, I think it creates an administrative nightmare for the town, because, who goes first? Who are the first 1,350? And then if you don't get on the list, then how do they prioritize who's on the list next? I mean, I don't know how they're gonna do that. And the town typically voters have not liked caps in the past, so I don't know how that'll go. And then the 7-day minimum is, of course, the intent is to limit the turnovers, but it also goes against why the short-term rental work group and the others had picked the count of turnovers versus minimum days. Because if you have someone who just rents once a week, but only for 2 days, you've actually got less stress on your infrastructure, fewer cars than for somebody who rents for a whole week. So I think that going back to that language of a certain day minimum, I don't think that's going to be particularly popular, but
Yeah,
I certainly wouldn't be able to rent my house anymore, because I never rent for 7 days. Can't do it.
Yeah. Well, those are the big issues, and so I think this is like making coffee. Let's let it percolate and figure out where we go. But I guess we need to do that pretty soon. Our next meeting is scheduled for January 4th, I believe, and Saturday, January 4th. I guess the first question is that still a good date for most people? And secondly, having failed, this is me personally, having failed to get a speaker for the last 2 meetings, I think it is, where that stands, because the speaker that we wanted was to talk about capital expenditures, which are kind of big and looming, and we'd like to understand where this is all going, because the non-resident taxpayers end up footing a large part of the bill. There was apparently the issue of capital expenditures in general was addressed at Wednesday's select board meeting. I had another event, so I did not watch it, but I'll take a look at the tape at some point. And Brian Turbot has told me that initially he said he wasn't going to come and go watch the select board meeting because it will answer all our questions. So I commend the last select board meeting to anybody who has not seen it, and see if all your questions have been answered. But secondly, in a second, Donna, it then turns out that he's willing to come, but Libby wants to come with him. And so I, put forth the January 4th date, but also said I wanted to, confirm that that was a good date from our point of view. I have no idea, whether anybody will be sober by January 4th, but so that's where that whole issue stands right now. Donna, you had a comment?
Oh, yeah, before you were explaining that, I did listen to most of the select board meeting on Wednesday, and Brian offered a presentation, a print presentation. So that could be an alternative. He itemizes everything.
Yeah. And well, then, was it in there? Usually they publish all the stuff that has been submitted prior to the meeting, like a select board packet each time. I wonder if that's in there. He did not refer me to that, but it's and then there's a whole capital projects committee that also exists. But in any event, we're continuing to pursue information about this and a presentation about it, and that may or may not happen on or around January 4th. So that.
Well, I did watch it. I did watch it, Peter, and I've seen it before. And he did give a presentation on what the capital asks are going to be for the upcoming meeting in May, which are gigantic. And then he showed the next several years, which are preposterous. But of course, he said everything is quite preliminary. But he did talk. But it's all there on the when you look at the tape of the select board, you'll see it's all there. Especially the important ones are what is likely to be asked for at the upcoming meeting in May.
Yeah.
So you want to look at that, which includes 96 million for the old island home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, is probably 20 million too low, but that's all they have the nerve to ask for right now.
Oh, but inflation is over. We all know that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a daunting number. And I think that's why Scott brought it up, is it looks fantastical from the point of view, when you look sort of long-term, what long-term is, what, 10 years perhaps?
Yeah.
You say, how can, what are things going to look like for people who pay property taxes in that period?
He went to 2040, I think. He went out as far as 2040.
Yeah, so that's what, 15 years or so.
But his presentation did not have any information about what the possible increase to the current tax rates would be based on the proposed expenditures, even those coming to the 25 annual town meeting. They hadn't done that work yet.
Yeah, it's, well, well, anyway, that's the status of getting somebody to talk about this, and availability of at least some recent, somewhat fresh information. So let's see. Patty, any PR committee? I guess the only news for all of you is that we, because of we didn't know whether Brian would appear or not until last minute. I know Steve sent out a news release saying Brian was coming and then had to retract it, and it was not, it was unfortunate, but it didn't get published, and that was the good part of it.
I don't have anything to report. I would like, going forward to still get our committee in some way, shape, or form to put together a way to engage or make known our presence in the community. I just think there's a huge percentage of people that have homes on Nantucket that don't realize that this committee exists.
Yeah. Any open items that anybody would like to bring up? These are the unanticipated items.
Well,
yeah.
Peter, did you say you were gonna say something about the planning master plan? Did you say that at the
Oh,
beginning?
yeah. Thank you for reminding me that I have done nothing on the master plan. We were invited to speak about communications, and that unfortunately slipped me by during the last several weeks. And so I'll reconnect with them and see where they are.
All right, so saying we're gonna we will have a meeting on the 4th with
Yeah.
Brian and Libby?
Well,
Yes?
that's the plan, but
Okay.
they have not confirmed.
Okay.
I will
Yeah,
now tell them that we are planning to have the meeting then, and can they come and do that?
Okay.
Peter, in the longer term, have we made any progress with the steamship speakers? It seems the challenges continue with the steamship authority, and it might be nice to get their perspective before the summer starts. I noticed that the general manager is resigning, I think, as of the 1st of the year, so it'll be yet another challenge for the organization.
Not just the general manager and the chief operating officer.
Which, it'd be hard to get the
all
boats
gone,
running on time
so
without a chief operating officer.
So Michael, in the past, I think on steamship issues, we've generally had whoever the Nantucket representative was to the steamship board or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And I've not contacted him or her. I don't know who it is now.
Rob Ranny still?
Rob Ranny, yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe we can set that up for, we have a February meeting. Maybe we could set up for February, and
Well, I just think it would be timely. I know when I talk to people, that it's always one or two of the top 2 or 3 issues that make getting to and from Nantucket a bit of a challenge.
yeah. Does anybody know how the speed limit, the federal speed limit on Nantucket Sound has turned out? I've not heard anything about that. Yeah, the issue there was going to be a federal speed limit that you couldn't go, any vessel of 36 feet, I think, or more had to go slow, basically, and that would have required twice as many ferries.
Yeah, the latest I heard on that was the Massachusetts delegation was going to carve out an exemption for Nantucket and the Vineyard. But I think under the Trump administration, that whole thing may change. So it's probably still in limbo.
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay, so it's up in the air, because that is, I mean, I think whatever is facing the steamship authority in terms of normal times, that thing is the real bubble buster.
Yeah, no, it will only make it worse.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I will contact them and then look forward to either January 4th or whatever the date is in February. And sort of if Libby and Brian can't commit to January 4th, to try to get him there. Assuming it's still Rob Randy.
It is
It's
Rob.
February
Yeah.
1st, so that's the 2 dates.
2-1. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Peter,
Yep.
I'd like the committee's sense of what are the thoughts about the wind farm issue? Is that something we want to consider? We want to leave it alone, or
What issue is that? I'm sorry, I didn't.
the wind farm?
Oh, the wind farm. Oh, offshore
Big
wind.
topic lately.
Offshore wind.
Well,
And
there's a
and
new
South wind.
proposal, and there's a new proposal. I kind of think that there's really nothing the town can do, despite no matter what we feel. It just seems to me like they're pretty powerless with the federal government saying you can put them there
Yeah.
in federal
I think
waters. I
that-
don't, you know.
Yeah, Kathy, I think there are things that can be done. New Jersey did something and they stopped. So there's some sort of a precedent.
Yeah, but
And the general sense on Tuesday's meeting was that we definitely should take a stronger stance. So I just wondered if that's something our committee wants to get into.
so the difference between New Jersey and Massachusetts, and I have no idea what New Jersey's position is. But you said New Jersey did something. Massachusetts policy, so that's the state level, not
Yes.
the small town level, or the county level, or whatever we are. Massachusetts policy is more wind farms are good, because there is a requirement in Massachusetts that by some date in the future, some huge percentage of electric power has to be from wind farms and solar and whatever else, and not from fossil fuels. And the only way to get there is by building wind farms and these other renewable sources. So that the state, in other words, unlike New Jersey, whatever New Jersey did, Massachusetts is not likely, at least as of today, to be in favor of limiting the wind farms off of its coast. So I'm just saying that the real fight is with Massachusetts first, not with the federal government. Yeah.
Agreed. And actually, as of January 20th, we don't really know what's going to happen, but there's somebody coming in who would not be in favor of wind farms anyway.
Yeah. Pam, you.
Yeah, Peter, I think I would feel uncomfortable with our committee coming out with a position on this because we don't all feel the same way. I am kind of appalled by the reaction to wind energy in our country compared to European countries where, you fly into Portugal, you fly into Italy, you fly into, any other country, and what you see as you're approaching are wind farms and solar fields. And if we think our island is going to survive without a new electrical cable being put under the ocean, we're kidding ourselves. We're going to need more energy out there. And I think there isn't enough data yet on, is Nantucket going to benefit from the generation of that wind energy? Is Nantucket going to buy into other renewable sources? And, okay, a blade fell off. It was tragic, but things happen in all different kinds of industries like this. And I just wouldn't be comfortable making a statement right now until we know more.
I would like to add to that, though, what you see in Europe is all farmland. It's not water. So there's plenty of area that you can go on farmland. not a good deal for water. That's my only comment.
I'd like to add to that because it's a lot more expensive to fix anything
Water.
out in the water.
It is.
Whereas on land, like California has had them for years,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
on land. So in fact, I knew somebody, a neighbor, when I used to winter in Palm Springs, and he would have to go up to the towers like on a regular basis to check them.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do that in the ocean. And also it doesn't affect, I don't want to, I mean, I understand that's fine. We don't have to do anything. I'm just getting a sense of it. But I am familiar with what's on land, but I also understand what's happening with marine life. And I sort of, I didn't realize I would be getting into that kind of a position. But personally, I am worried about what's there. And there's also a blade on the seafloor that hasn't even been removed yet.
Mhm.
And as of Tuesday night, somebody was walking along Mattocket. She brought a bag of pieces of the blade from her walk that Tuesday. And also there was a chemist who spoke maybe a month or two ago, and she had all the information about chemically what happens. And even though they say it's inert, it actually isn't. And I do believe that, based on all the chemicals that are in those blades. It is inert. And the other thing, it's not inert. And the other thing is the noise and everything. Anyway.
So there are a lot of them in Massachusetts that you see when you leave the island and drive across the Cape. There's a lot on land.
Which is perfect. I think that's great.
But I mean, I would love to know more about if it's dangerous to the people who live close to it on land too. I am all about it being environmentally sound. What bothers me are the people who take magnified pictures and show this little thing, and that upsets them. It's their view, because it isn't about the view. It is about the environment and about clean energy and about doing it in the right places. And if the water is found to be the wrong place, that's fine. But I would hate to get on the bandwagon either way, because it seems like the balls have been dropped in so many places already with people not vetting this. So I don't think we have a lot to say in this.
I,
But
I'd like
you, sorry.
actually, wind energy is the most efficient wind. It creates the most electricity versus a farm and, being over land. So that is one of the benefits of it. It is in federal waters, so that we can only talk about mitigation with individual companies. It's really the state battling the federal government. But in New Jersey, yes, they canceled 2 of the contracts, but they've signed 2 new ones. So they haven't outlawed wind energy. And I've worked with the New England Aquarium, and I've asked that question multiple times, and they said they've seen nothing so far that damages marine life, because the bigger concern is the ocean is so hot that it's forcing species to move north to survive and find an acceptable climate to live in. So wind is secondary to the heat of the ocean. So sometimes they said it's actually a good place for a whale to hide, because there is no traffic near a wind farm, and it is safer in certain ways for them. So
I don't know about that, because
Yeah,
then you
I
have
I think-
decibels and things like that.
biologists telling me
Yeah,
that.
I think to some extent, though, we're kind of getting involved in a much more complicated, larger issue as to how you get more or less dependent on fossil fuel. But I think the practical point from Nantucket's perspective is we're an island that lives and dies on tourism. And if we have beaches closed for multiple days during the high season, that's going to impact the tourism. And I think we need to think about what that means to Nantucket and the economy of Nantucket.
And does the short-term rental regulations also affect?
I mean,
the
there are so
tourism?
many iron.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, and I think for us to try and get involved in this political cesspool
Yeah, it's hard.
probably isn't practical, but I sympathize with the selectmen in terms of, you know, you close the beaches on the South Coast for, you know, 2 weeks in July,
Got a problem.
that's going to have a pretty negative impact on people wanting to come for short-term rentals and come to the island.
It affects our reputation.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like there is not a consensus amongst those in this group. And also given that the actual decisions will be made far, far away, and all the noise that each side would like to make on this issue is already being made by others. It seems to me that we do not have a role to play based on the current facts.
Well, there is the issue of the $18 million or whatever it was agreement between the town and Mariah Mitchell, and I don't know who the third party was, and the wind farm developers. And do we want to take a position on whether the town should continue in that agreement or behave like Mariah Mitchell and bail out of it? I don't particularly have a feeling one way or the other, but that's about the only thing that we have that we could somehow impact if we choose to.
I think you're referring to the good neighbor agreement.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
And given everybody's comments and thoughts, personally, I don't think we should get involved.
Well, I agree with you, but that's.
I mean, I'll get involved personally, but I mean, as a committee, no.
Yeah, it's a mitigation agreement, as I understand it. In other words,
It's a PR agreement. We agreed not to badmouth them.
Yes.
The town agreed not to badmouth the developers.
blackmail. Blackmail, did you say?
Well, you know what was interesting? The attorneys who are representing us only get paid if the town settles with Bohm. It's sort of a conflict of interest, I think.
That sounds like a standard sort of plaintiff's attorney's compensation agreement, which is supposed to give them an incentive for getting a good result. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, I think. So anything else that we can discuss that we can't do anything about? We have
a long list of those.
Yeah. So do we have a motion to adjourn today's meeting? And I'll sort of keep people up to date on efforts to get either Libby and Brian or Rob Rennie to come to one of our next two meetings.
I motion.
And I'll
I want
second.
to wish.
Second.
And I would like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Thanks.
All of you and yours.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And
Absolutely.
happy holidays.
That's good. Anybody going to spend their Thanksgiving on Nantucket?
No.
No.
Not this year.
I was, but I
Just
was
Joe
going.
Biden, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Okay, well, have a good weekend. This is a blissfully short meeting for us.
Yes.
But I
Well
I-
done.
I appreciate all the participation and the thoughtful views. Doesn't matter which side you're on, but your views are thoughtful.
Peter, Lynn already signed off, but I will give her credit because there is a lot of stuff online from oceanographers and marine scientists that mention that most of the dead whales they find, be they juveniles or adults, are vessel strikes and entanglement and fishing nets.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
so many cans of worms that can get opened here.
Yeah.
And I just think that like, until we know more, we probably don't want to take a hard, fast.
Well, Pam, I don't know whether you were at our meeting with Libby this year.
Yeah.
But I asked her, well, then you may or may not remember my apparently not memorable comment. How can you square the tension between the whales are being killed by windmills and we don't want the boat
We
speed?
want to drive faster. Yeah.
The same people.
Sorry.
No, I think
I
it's
don't think
more
it has
the
much to do with
environment of
whales.
the water quality is being affected
Well,
by
one of the-
all of the inert
Yeah.
stuff, which is not inert.
Yes. One of the things I did want to say, since you brought up Libby, quick afterthought is, she seemed very interested in having some of us get involved with different issues on the island where we could add some expertise or some help on projects. Did any of you open up that survey that the traffic department sent out?
Yes, I
Okay,
did.
I'm sorry. I worked in survey design years ago. I thought it was the most poorly designed survey I've ever seen. It was confusing. It was hard for the average person to respond to. And I can't imagine how they're going to correlate the data. And I hope nobody in this room designed it. But I was a little blown away by what they're going to get out of that. And are we or was it just an exercise in making it look like there was a
I
concern?
don't know.
Do we have
I
a
mean-
motion to just adjourn?
Yes.
We did
On the
adjourn.
phone?
Yeah,
We're not recording anymore, are we?
I move that we adjourn.
So a motion to adjourn and then we can continue to talk.
Okay.
So it's because we'll turn off the
I
recording.
need to sign off. Have a nice holiday,
Thank
everybody.
you. Yeah, we
All
should
right.
You
probably,
holiday.
too. Enjoy.
probably
you.
shouldn't have said all that while the recording was on.